and thanks for joining. My name is Colin Howard, and today I'm going to be covering a demonstration of Maximo specific to life sciences. So today I'll walk you through where Maximo plays in the industry of life sciences, how it has provided value, and then lastly, walk you through a real live demonstration of Maximo. So with that, let's go ahead and kick things off. Now, the first thing that I want to do as part of this demonstration is walk you through where Maximo plays. There are three key areas in which I see Maximo playing in life sciences today. The first is around Maximo providing a single pane of glass for monitoring and optimized operations specific to managing assets. Now, this allows users such as technicians, supervisors, reliability engineers, storeroom clerks to take quick and proactive action when maintaining assets and inventory. And having all the key information related to an asset all in one location. And the second that we see here is around automation. Now, more specifically, what Maximo can do around consolidating disparate systems. We talk a lot about bringing in data from, this could be homegrown systems, systems from such as ERP systems, operational technology systems such as SCADA, OSI Pi. Bringing that data in, this can help improve operations, reduce downtime, and improve reporting. Lastly, that we have, and number three that we see here, is the level of control and governance in Maximo. Things and components like e-audit, e-signature, reducing time and cost of validating your environment. These are key areas which we've seen Maximo bring a lot of clients, or a lot of value to clients within the life science area. Now, when we look at why Maximo is the number one undisputed EAM system there is. It has not changed for the past 16 years, and with the new investment IBM is putting into the product, such as machine learning capabilities, a new interface, user-centric development, we're really striving to do this another 16 years plus as the leader. And I think it's just important as well to highlight that the top 7 out of the 10 pharma companies are run on Maximo. Now, when you think of Maximo, the best way to think of it is it's a toolbox. It has 38 years of worth of product development and tools in the asset management space. It contains everything from work order management all the way to predictive analytics powered by IBM Watson. And as part of buying Maximo, you get the whole toolbox. And you get to choose which components of Maximo that you want to leverage in your day-to-day. Now, as assets mature, as clients mature in their asset management journey, moving from reactive-based maintenance all the way to AI optimized maintenance, they already have everything that they need in Maximo to complete each step of the way. And we have a lot of clients that are making amazing strides and beginning to leverage out-of-the-box machine learning models and capabilities to move towards that AI optimized maintenance. And so for this demonstration, however, we're going to be focusing specifically on work order management, asset management, supply chain, and mobility. And I'll cover some of those more advanced AI capabilities in another video. With that, let's go ahead and jump into the demonstration. We're going to start off this demonstration from the point of view of a supervisor. Now, typically, when we talk about the role of a supervisor, oftentimes supervisors are challenged with a manual process of tracking assets. And this could be from doing a paper-based approach of manually tracking assets, work orders, tracking work through a paper-based system, Excel, maybe they're even doing routing through email. This could be even from pulling from disparate systems, homegrown systems, ERP, operational systems, And oftentimes we find supervisors need a single pane of glass to evaluate the work that needs to be completed, its work status, where it is, and the process of getting completed, and have the ability to assign work quickly and proactively. Now, for this scenario, let's say that a service request came in and has been generated for a bioreactor that has shown signs of temperature fluctuation. I'll walk you through a supervisor's role of investigating the request, generating a work package against that request, and delegating a work to technician in which they can resolve the issue in an effective manner. So as a supervisor, I'm going to go ahead and open up Maximo here. And the first thing that I see immediately when opening this up is all of the different applications that I have access to in this environment. And here you can see that by that green check mark. Now, as a supervisor, I spend most of my day in the Manage application, which is Maximo's primary EAM solution. So I'm going to go ahead and click that module to begin my day. So right off the bat, as a supervisor, I can click on my dashboard that has all the key performance indicators that I use and measure on my day-to-day. Here we have in the top left a list of all the new requests that have come in that I need to evaluate along with the priority. On the far right, we have a results set, which here we just have high priority assets that or high priority requests that have come in. In the case that there is some with lower priority, it would be shown as well. Bottom left, we have some key KPIs that are important to me, including some work orders that are past overdue, as well as what work orders are waiting my approval. And these are key indicators that I use in my day-to-day to begin my work. Now, what sticks out to me as a supervisor as we look up here in this top left-hand corner is a list of service requests that have come in that are high priority. And here we can see that there's temperature fluctuation with a bioreactor. So we're going to go ahead and drill into the service request to get a little bit more information on what's going on. Right off the bat, we can see the location of which the service request was created, who created it. And what's important to me as I scroll down, for example, is a summary description, as well as what type of assets were affected by this request. And here we can see that the request states that there's temperature fluctuation on the bioreactor, and then an urgent request for maintenance needs to be done so it's not affecting the product itself in this upstream process. So this is a high priority asset, so let's drill in. This will be the next step I'll want to take as a supervisor to get more information. Now this brings up the asset application within Maximo. This is where we store a lot of asset information that I can review as a supervisor to get a better understanding of what's the type of work that needs to be completed. Now we can see the status of this asset. So this is an operating piece of equipment within our environment. We have the actual site, an image of the asset, and down below is where we can begin to understand how this relates to other assets within our system. One way that we can look at these type of parent-to-child relationships is by clicking on this icon here, or, and this is the most popular view that we see, is to drill into this drill down, which will show what system it's a part of, what asset. There's two other reactors, bioreactors that are a part of the system. And below we can see a breakdown of the individual subcomponents of this piece of equipment, as well as spare parts. So here we can see that there's a control system, a gas exchange, nutrient supply system, and some additional spare parts such as replacement sensors if need be. And down at the bottom, we can see where this is actually located. And here the location is set as the upstream process area. One thing that I'm going to want to review as a supervisor is the different failure codes and failure classes for this particular asset. This will give me a better understanding of what are some of the common failures for this asset class and what's happening now in present time. Here we have contamination, mixing issues, we have temperature fluctuation. And as I click into each of these, you can see the change in both problem, cause, and remedy. Here we see that the cause for this could be an inaccurate temperature control. So maybe the sensor itself that either we need to recalibrate or replace completely. So with this information, this is also information that's gonna flow down into the work order once I create it, and we can assign so that technicians can also have this information. Let's scroll down a little bit further. We can see the address of where this is located. The reason why this is helpful is as a supervisor, this service address can be associated with a map. This can be Google Maps, this could be Esri, this could be Bing Maps if you use Bing Maps. And the reason why this is valuable to me as a supervisor is especially when looking at what sequence should we delegate work out in the field. Depending on its location, there may want to be a specific sequence that you set to optimize where the technician goes to complete the work. And from a technician standpoint, they need to know, especially if they're traveling to go from work location to work location, they need to understand where to go. And here we can see on the map where this is located. Let's go ahead and go back a little bit further down. We can record cost information on this particular asset. The reason why this is important is when you look at from a systems level, when you filter within the BERT reporting built into Maximo, or maybe it's the Cognos reporting, which also comes as an entitlement to Maximo, you can begin to roll up these costs to different levels in which you can begin to associate, okay, where am I seeing the most costs within the past 6 months, week, year, time span? Where can I start implementing strategies to reduce these costs? And this is where a lot of this bringing in information around purchasing information becomes really important. And here we can see the expected life, which is something traditionally comes from the OEM or from past experience working with this vendor and this specific asset class. We can estimate the expected end of life. This is important for me as well when looking at costs, as as this asset begins to degrade, should I replace this asset or take the time and cost to maintain it? So there's several different ways that being able to track this in Maximo is important. Let's move over to spare parts now. As a supervisor, I'm going to want to be able to see, very similar to what we saw before, the different assets that drill into this parent asset and spare parts. A question that I often get asked is, can you have spare parts across multiple assets? The answer to that is yes. You can have multiple spare parts. And what's valuable here, especially when as part of a work order delegating these spare parts, maybe it's a replacement, maybe it's a rotating item, you can also track its availability within the inventory application in Maximo. And this is just giving us a little bit of the highlights of what we're collecting in Maximo. So we know the exact storeroom, the quantity that's available. And as a supervisor, I need to know this so that I don't assign an item to a work order which we don't have the quantity for. Now, Maximo, you can actually set that up to where you can, and I'll just show that as part of this demonstration. But you can set reorder points where if this goes below a certain point, you can create a PR, PO for replenishing that item within Maximo. Moving along this, you can see where these items are stored, what storerooms, if there's any existing PRs, POs out there, where does this spare part exist as part of contracts we've created with vendors, alternate items to this that you could potentially use as part of a work order. and where are these spare parts currently reserved at. This could be a hard reserve, soft reserve. Real quickly before we continue our story here, let's just go ahead and look at, because I get this question asked a lot, is about what happens if an item gets below a certain point. Within the inventory application, which is where we track the balance, the reordering details, the quantity, the cost of the item, we can also see that reorder point. So if this gets below 5 quantity within our central storeroom, it's going to go ahead and generate a purchase order for this, or a purchase request. You see, we also record key information such as economic order quantity, what makes the most sense economically for reordering, estimated lead time for us to replenish our inventory. This is where those type of information is stored. So now that we've reviewed the spare parts, we can also begin to implement a safety strategy. This is extremely important in every industry, also in life sciences as well. If there's hazards, we can record those as part of this asset application. So when we tie that to a work order, we can begin to assign precautions. This can include type of clothing that the individual will need to wear in order to begin work. And a part of the work order, it'll tell the technician, listen, you need to review the safety plan before beginning the work. Let's talk about meters within life sciences as well. This is where we see a lot of clients who leverage control systems today. They can bring that information directly into Maximo. That could be information that they're taking based off of temperature, hydrogen or pH, dissolved oxygen, vibration, pressure. A lot of these readings that can typically be either collected manually, maybe that's through an inspection within Maximo, maybe that's just a work order in which you're entering meter readings. That can be directly from the system itself that we integrate Maximo into. We have a lot of out-of-box integration. We purchased a company and tool to integrate with a variety of operational technology systems, such as protocols like MQTT for sensors, Modbus. If there's a protocol, we can most likely integrate with it using a tool called Omnio. It's a company we purchased a few years ago. That is our integration tool within Maximo. Moving on, specifications. We have a list of specifications specific to this asset. That includes what material it's made out of, the size. But what's really important for me as a supervisor is to begin to look at past work that's happened for this equipment. Now, what we're seeing here and why this is valuable as a supervisor is I can look in past work that could potentially tell me and give me an understanding of what's happening today. So here we see that temperature has actually fluctuated in the past. And we did a calibration in the past in order to fix it. However, today it's fluctuating as well. Instead of doing a calibration, we may want to just go ahead and replace the sensor on it completely. This is the type of information that is helpful in having Maximo as a single pane of glass for me as a supervisor. But with that, let's go ahead and create a work order for this asset. Now that we have a better understanding of what needs to be completed. Now for the description, we can just say temperature fluctuation. And in details, we can say that this is caused by a faulty temperature sensor and that a replacement is recommended. And as you can see here, we're rolling down that priority from the assets application. So now that the work order is created, we can go back to the work tab and see that that work is now waiting my approval. So let's go ahead and migrate to the work order application and talk a little bit to what's all involved in creating a work package and how Maximo can help reduce the time it takes to investigating an issue, assigning the work, assigning a safety plan, setting the tasks, needed in order to complete the work, and delegating out the work. So let's go ahead and one thing that to highlight out here that I didn't mention before is we oftentimes, it's not uncommon to see supervisors get anywhere from maybe 20 to 200 work orders and service requests a day. So the value that Maximo brings is the ability to do that as effectively as possible and improve productivity through having all of this information in one location. First thing I'm going to do in building out this work order, we're going to go ahead and say that this is part of emergency maintenance. As we scroll down, we're going to want to include that problem code. This was something we reviewed earlier around including problem cause remedy as part of this overall process. So here we're going to tell the technician, yeah, this was caused by temperature fluctuation, and this is potentially going to cause a failure if not controlled and fixed. As we scroll down, we can see where we can set a job plan from a list of pre-built job plans we've created. A job plan is really just a template for all the tasks, materials needed, all packaged together to where a supervisor can quickly just choose the job plan that is recommended and include that as part of a work order. That saves a tremendous amount of time and effort. For this demonstration, we're going to do it manually just to get you comfortable with how this process works. And down below, also setting a safety plan. Very similar to a job plan, it's a template. It sets exactly what do you need to include as far as documents, materials, clothing, safety measures that need to be taken place in order for a technician to then conduct the work. We're going to show manually how this process is done. On the right, you see the priority that we rolled down into this inspection or into this work order. But with that, let's go ahead and begin creating our plan. So for this, the first step in this process is to go ahead and create several tasks the technician will need to complete in order to complete this work order. The first is to disconnect and remove the sensor. We're going to say this is going to take anywhere from maybe 5 minutes to complete. Let's add another task. Let's say this is to do the replacement. And lastly, we'll do an inspection just to make sure that there are normal readings. Say this takes 10 minutes. And one thing to highlight out here, if we wanted a technician to do this within a certain order, all we'd have to do is type in 1, 2, 3. For this case, there are times where a supervisor would want this done in parallel. In this case, we keep it blank. If there are specific owners and specific individuals or individual groups that are needed in order to complete these tasks, and as we see here in parallel, we would assign that here. So there's specific groups that would be assigned each of these tasks that can get the work done in parallel. Down at the bottom, we can begin to include material that the technician will need in order to complete the work. Here, we'll go ahead and select a value, and we'll type in sensor. And this will allow me to quickly search for the sensor that we'll need to use as part of this work order. The next step that I'll take a part of this process, now that we've created the plan, we have the material that we need to then assign the work. And for this is very important to me as a supervisor, is I can quickly go ahead and choose which labor record, and which is just an individual, that I want to actually work on. And there's restrictions here where we can set that limits who we can choose. So if this is a specific job plan that requires a specific qualification or skill set, we can set that up as part of the job plan. But here we're going to just assign it to a mechanic who's going to go in, going to do the replacement of the sensor, and move on to his or her next task. Here is where a lot of that information would sit, such as skill level, but here we're just going to do a simple use case of assigning this to myself and as a mechanic. Now let's move back to the material. Seemed like we had, we need to assign a storeroom. And this is a good part of Maximo is if you are missing key information that is required, Maximo will let you know. And so what we have here is a central storeroom is required to be entered. And you can see that by the asterisk in the top left. This is very configurable. There's something called Application Designer within Maximo where you can quickly go in, set required fields, move, add fields. If we have time, I'll show that at the end of this demonstration, how you can quickly do that. But this gives you a quick way to do that as well. Once this is done, we can move on to our safety plan. Now, here is where we can add different hazards that are associated with this particular asset. I think we saw one, which was around exposure to fumes that could be a potential hazard. And part of precautions that we'll need this technician to take is to wear the right clothing. So here we're going to say that this technician needs to have steel-toed boots. They'll need to have specific clothing, and maybe they even need to have goggles as well as part of this. So this is where we can begin to set up those safety plans, include attachments that will need to be reviewed by the technician in order to ensure that they are safe. Data sheet we'll talk about in a little bit. Logs, we can include notes to the technician, but for the most part, what we've done as a supervisor is just show a very quick way that we can bring in all the information we need to get work completed in a quick fashion. We created tasks for the technician, materials, a safety plan, and we assigned it to a correct labor resource. So now the next thing to do is to go ahead and approve the work order. And it's also important to note that this can also be sent as part of an email to update our technicians, but our technicians actually have the mobile Maximo application. So they can go ahead and just open up their app and begin the work. And that's exactly what we're going to show as part of this next part. So I'm going to disappear and we are going to show you my screen. Let me increase the size of this so that you can actually see my iPad. And now we're going to change hats from a supervisor to a technician. Now, a technician oftentimes struggles with the manual process of using physical paperwork orders. Maybe they have multiple systems for maintaining and conducting maintenance on an asset. And I oftentimes find that technicians have to go to multiple different sources to gather information on an asset, such as what work that they have for the day, past work history on an asset, meter readings, location of an asset, safety plans. Now, as a technician, I want a way to have all of this information at my fingertips when conducting work. Just as importantly, oftentimes I work remotely in areas with little to no service, so I need to be able to do this in both an offline, and remote way. So let's see how this work is completed as a technician using Maximo. So the first thing that I'm going to have here is, as a technician, I'm going to open up the app on my iPad. Now, this can also be Android or Windows tablets, or even your mobile device. It's just available out on any app store that you utilize. Just go to the App Store and download the app. But here's a technician. I'm going to open up my tablet and immediately see what capabilities I have access to in Maximo. This includes my schedule for the day, materials, tools that I need today. a map to help direct me to the locations of what the work needs to be done. But as a technician, what's important to me as I begin my day, and as we refresh, we can see that at the top of my schedule is that high priority work order my supervisor created for me to take action on. So I'll click into the work order to review all the information I need to complete on that work. And so here we can see that temperature fluctuation, as well as a calibration test that I have for another asset down below. Let's go ahead and start that high priority work. At the top of the work order that we see here, I'm immediately presented with the required safety plan for me to follow. This will require me to review and follow this in order to proceed. So if I click on the safety plan, this will give me information such as what's some of the material that I need to wear, such as steel-toed boots, exposure to fumes, is the hazard that I need to be aware of, and to include eye protection. After I've reviewed the safety plan, Maximo will allow me to continue by clicking that nice little blue button. The next step I want to take is to review the materials for this work order. So if I click on materials, we can see that I need to gather a temperature sensor from the central storeroom in order to begin the work. Once that is complete and I have my materials, I want to look at the failure codes associated with the asset to get a better understanding of the problem. And here, what's important to me to see here is I can see that there's a temperature fluctuation, and with the notes from my supervisor, they're going to need me to do a replacement of that faulty sensor. But this gives me all very similar information to what the supervisor needs me to have in order to complete the work. The next is, as part of that job plan that my supervisor created, I can see all the tasks that I will need to perform in order to complete the work. And as I scroll down, I can begin. And what's important to notice here, and let me move this screen over just a little bit so that you can see this, is as a technician, I need to ensure that the asset that I'm performing maintenance on is indeed the correct one. And so what we're going to see here is I'm going to open up I'm going to click this QR button, open up the barcode, scan the barcode of the asset to ensure that it is the correct asset that I need to be working on. Now, let's say that the barcode is an asset that is not the asset that I need to be working on. We can review that and see, okay, so how would Maximo respond here? And here, Maximo prompts us and says, this is not the correct asset we need to be working on, and gives you a couple things to check as well. Are you in the right location? Are you working on the correct asset? And we can go ahead and click OK to continue. Because this is related to temperature, as a technician, I may want to review past history of meter readings. This can include temperature, pH, oxygen levels, but I really want to focus on that temperature reading to understand how this is performed in the past. Down below, we can see the final attachments. This could be attachments that the supervisor includes, such as safety plan. Maybe it's a repair document that they wanted to include as well. But with all this information, I think I'm ready to begin the work. So I'm going to click that nice fancy blue button at the top right-hand corner to begin my work and start recording my time. I'm going to click the next blue button, which is to begin my tasks. And here we can see all the tasks that my supervisor provided as part of this demonstration. Now, as part of this inspection, I didn't include an inspection form for this demonstration, but if you want to see how you can do inspections within the mobile application, I'll link a video in the description where you can go see. Once I've completed these tasks, I can complete the work, include the cause and confirm the cause and remedy of what we had to fix. We had to calibrate and or replace the sensor. In this case, we replaced it, and include a summary and description as part of the failure. Lastly, I will add that sensor that we used as part of the materials we used for this work. We can include that. Click OK and complete the work. Now with that, that completes the work for a technician. Here we can see that work order is completed. With that, I can move on to my next task in my day. So with that, we've seen how a technician, very similar to a supervisor, can have all the information I need at my fingertips when conducting work. No longer am I taking time to gather information from disparate systems or through manual processes. I can focus my time on doing the work efficiently and done the first time. This can help reduce downtime, ensure safety, and reduce costs and improve overall productivity. So there's a lot of value we see clients realize through leveraging this. Let's go ahead and go back to Maximo. Here we go. So one thing that we're going to highlight for this last part of this demonstration is what about the case where we're not necessarily replacing the sensor, but we're needing to recalibrate it. Let's walk you through a scenario where a calibration tech would go ahead and use Maximo in order to do that. And to do that, we're going to go to our data sheet. Now, calibration techs, very similar to technicians, want the ability to have a single place to conduct maintenance, inspections, calibration, and other tasks to optimize productivity and reduce downtime. As a calibration tech, I want to begin this calibration process by reviewing our data sheet for a temperature transmitter. And the data sheet is essentially a template that defines a specification for an asset for the calibration process. And so here we're going to bring up our data sheet for our temperature transmitter. And if we scroll down, we see the asset functions tab, which is where I can begin to understand what inputs and outputs of the test we have, as well as the tolerance that we set for each. Now, down below is where we set each calibration point. That'll give us the points in which we can test against the equipment. And here we see low, mid, high point, and the nominal and desired input and outputs that we have specifically for this test. Now, if we open up the functions tab, I see as we scroll down the tolerance that we've set for both input and output. So here we see the input range. We'll be inputting using a simulator, a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius, and we expect the output of the transmitter to range in between 4 to somewhere around 20. Now, as we scroll down, we can see what is some of the criteria and tolerances for this test to pass. Or in the case that it needs adjustment, calibration, this range is going to be a little bit more tolerant or less tolerant. And then as we go to the third tolerance in which this test would fail, it would need to be fluctuating an entire point. So with that, this is how within Maximo we set up these type of tolerances and calibration points. Now, let's walk you through an actual use case where we're creating a work order for a piece of equipment that needs to be calibrated. And so here we're going to go ahead and type in one of these temperature transmitters. Right off the bat, we can see that this asset is something that does need to be calibrated. Checking this box off allows work orders to have that data sheet tab, which I'll show you in a second. But this is the asset that we're going to begin to calibrate against. Now, we've already created a work order for this particular piece of equipment in which we're going to do our calibration. So let's go ahead and open up work order tracking. We can see there's a job plan, so the tasks in order to complete the work are already going to be set for us because we have that job plan. So let's go ahead, open up this work order. We can see that it is of type calibration, whereas the past work order we generated in this presentation was emergency maintenance. We're going to migrate over to the plans tab where we're going to see each of those tasks needed to be performed by the Caltech in order to complete the work. The labor, which is, this requires at least a third class Caltech in order to complete the work. And more importantly for me as a calibration technician, I want to go ahead and open up the datasheet tab within the work order to begin doing the work. Now, the associated datasheet is the datasheet we just looked at. We're going to see very similar functionality to what we saw within that datasheet. If we open up the asset functions, it's going to give us those tolerances that we set within that datasheet. And one of the questions I get asked is, do we have to create a separate datasheet for each asset asset that we're working against? And the answer is, if it has different tolerances, then yes. What best practices is you're going to duplicate that data sheet and apply that new data sheet that has new tolerances to that asset. And that way you spend less time having to create all of this manually. So that's part of that best practices. One thing that you're going to see differently here as we complete the calibration points down below, for the as found, as left input, as left output, we're going to see these tests either pass, need adjustment, or fail. And this is, again, from what we set up in Maximo. So for example, let's just go ahead and show you what this would look like if it was in a passing state. We're going to go ahead and save. One question I always get asked is this tracked as part of an e-audit process? The answer is yes. So every change that I make in here, every calibration point that I enter, that I save, is being tracked as part of an e-audit process. And we'll cover that in a later video. But as you can see here, we go ahead and put in the as found input, and we see that it now has passed. And you can do the same for the as left input. And this is where we would go, and now calibration is very specific. Calibration technicians are very specific in how they want to do calibration. Everything that you see here can be quickly transformed, configured to exactly meet, if not all, calibration technician needs. So that's something that we can do with here. But that gives you a quick example of basic calibration functionality. We typically see with partners, this can get fairly in depth and detailed, where we spend anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes with someone who specializes in just calibration. We have great partners out there that do these type of in-depth demonstration of calibration, but this gives you a basic understanding what comes with Maximo out of the box. But with that, calibration technicians no longer need to take a paper-based approach or having to work with multiple systems in order to complete the work. They can do all of this within Core Maximo and ensure that the processes that they take in order to complete the work is done in an optimal way, increases productivity, and reduces future downtime. So with that, thank you for the time, everyone. This covered quite a bit of basic out-of-the-box functionality within Maximo. For more videos, please feel free to contact me at my email in the link in the description of this video, and I will talk to you in future demonstrations.